After my manager canceled my bereavement leave for my dog's death, saying it was just a pet, get over it, I replaced all his presentation backgrounds with a slideshow of me and my dog at the beach with soft violin music. The client cried Midway and asked if we could reschedule. I work for a mid-sized marketing agency based in Clearwater, Florida. We're not a giant company like the ones in New York or LA. We handle some big clients in the Southeast, and our team is tight-knit. Or at least it used to be. I'd been with this company for 7 years, long enough to survive 3 rounds of layoffs to rebrands, and one ugly sexual harassment scandal that almost tanked us. I wasn't flashy or cutthroat like some of the others who came and went. I just did my job, did it well, and stayed in my lane. That changed after we hired Brad. Brad came from Atlanta. He wore loafers without socks, always smelled like expensive aftershave, and talked about golf even when no one asked. He wasn't the worst guy I ever met, but he treated people like they were tools he could trade out when dull. If he liked you, he'd champion your ideas to upper management. If not, you became invisible. He got promoted to regional manager 6 months after he started. We all knew it was politics. His old frat buddy was on the board. Once Brad had power, the atmosphere changed. Weekly check-ins became surveillance. Every client pitch became about ego. And every mistake was a reason for public embarrassment. That's the environment I was in when my dog, Blue, died. Blue wasn't just a pet. He was my only family left. I'm 38, never married, no kids, and my parents passed within a year of each other, cancer and stroke. Blue was there through it all. I found him outside a Publix parking lot one summer, ribs showing, with a broken leash dragging behind him. I took him in, and he saved me more than I saved him. He was 12 when he died, old for a blue healer. His kidneys failed over the course of 3 weeks. I used up every spare minute I had taking him to the vet, adjusting his meds and sleeping next to him on the floor because he couldn't get on the bed anymore. When he passed, I wasn't right. I tried to hold it together that Monday, but my face was red and swollen from crying. And my voice cracked every time someone asked, "Are you okay?" I told my direct supervisor, Jen, that I needed a few days off to process. Jen was kind and said she'd approve bereavement, same as we'd given others who lost family members. But it needed Brad's sign-off. He called me into his office 10 minutes later. I still remember how calm he was, leaning back in his overpriced chair, one leg crossed like he was posing for a magazine. "So I hear you're asking for bereavement leave," he said, clicking his pen slowly. "Yes," I said. "My dog died. He was like family." There was a pause. Then he smirked. "It was just a pet, Miles. Come on, let's not get dramatic." I said nothing. I stared at the floor, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palm. "You've got the Thompson Deck presentation Wednesday," he continued. "That's our biggest account. We can't afford to drop the ball. Jen can move some things off your plate, but you're not getting leave for a dead dog." I didn't speak. I just nodded and left. That night, I went home, sat on the couch in the dark, and looked at Blue's empty food bowl. I cried so hard I got a migraine, and something broke inside me. Brad had disrespected me, disrespected my grief, and spit on the only being I'd truly loved in years. I decided right then I wouldn't let it go. I wouldn't yell or cry in front of him. I'd wait. I'd plan. And when the time was right, I'd make him feel every bit of what he made me feel. And the perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, we were scheduled to present the new quarterly branding strategy to Thompson Food Group, a huge chain of grocery stores across the Southeast. They're worth millions to us annually. Brad had been working for weeks to butter up their new VP of Marketing, Melissa Barris, a woman with a reputation for being sharp but deeply sentimental. She came from nonprofit work and lost her own husband to cancer last year. I knew this because I did my homework. She also had a golden retriever named Sunny she posted about on LinkedIn more than anything else. We were set to meet in our Clearwater conference room Thursday morning. Brad would lead. I was set to click through the slides. Only the slides weren't what he thought. On Wednesday night, I stayed late. Everyone else had gone. I copied the original deck to my desktop, the slick, minimalistic PowerPoint Brad had obsessively polished. I opened the slides and made changes. Nothing obvious on the first few. Logos still intact. Title page untouched. The transition stayed smooth. But starting around slide 6, things started to shift. I replaced the backgrounds with soft focus beach photos, all taken from my last weekend with Blue. Him smiling, him with wet paws, him napping in the sand. The marketing content was still there, bullet points, charts, forecasts, but layered over the soft imagery of a dying dog's last happy day. And then came the final 6 slides, the presentation's emotional close, which Brad had wanted to wow them with. I changed them entirely. I made a silent photo montage, pictures of Blue and me over the years, in the park, sleeping on the couch, licking my face. Overlaid with white text, we measure value in loyalty. We invest in what lasts. We mourn what mattered. The music? A soft, slow violin piece I found on a royalty-free website. I embedded it into the slides to autoplay when the last section started. It was just sad enough to tug heartstrings. I saved it, hid the old file deep in a random subfolder with a fake name. Made sure Brad wouldn't check. He never reviewed the slides a day of. That would be delegating. Thursday morning, Brad showed up with his cocky smile, slicked back hair, and new cologne. He shook hands with Melissa and her team like he was some polished genius. I sat at the far end, ready to click through when he nodded. The first few slides were smooth. Brad had a script, and he stuck to it. Melissa nodded along, asking a few questions. Her assistant took notes. Then, around slide 6, I noticed the first flicker of confusion. Brad paused. He said, squinting. As you can see, our approach blends traditional branding with. Behind him, a picture of Blue in the waves faded in slowly. Melissa tilted her head. Is that a dog? Brad spun around. I kept a straight face. Slides preloaded, I said. Background art. I clicked again. Another picture. Blue wearing sunglasses, tongue out. Brad was frozen now. Melissa didn't smile. She just stared, lips parted. Then the violin music started. The room went quiet. Brad tried to talk, but Melissa raised her hand. Wait, let it play. It did. All 6 slides. Me and Blue. Happy, peaceful. The last one was just Blue sitting by the water, looking out into the ocean with the words, "If loyalty was a brand, he was mine." Silence. Then Melissa wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I need a moment. She stood up and walked out of the room. Her assistant followed, visibly shaken. Brad turned slowly toward me, his face a shade of red I'd never seen before. What the F*** did you do? I shrugged. You said the Thompson deck had to make an impact. He stormed out after them. They didn't come back. An hour later, we got word the meeting was being rescheduled. By that afternoon, word had spread. By Friday, I was suspended pending review. But that's not where this ends. This is just the beginning. The following Monday, I was called into HR. They sat me in a small windowless room with a box of tissues on the table like I was about to cry or confess something. Instead, I just leaned back and waited. Across from me sat Daphne, head of HR. She was new. Corporate sent her in from Tampa 2 months ago to streamline internal conflict resolution. In plain terms, she was there to cut problems fast and quietly. She didn't say good morning. Do you understand why you're here? She asked, hands folded over a manila folder. Yes, I said calmly. She opened the folder, pulled out a printed email. Brad filed a formal complaint. He says you deliberately sabotaged a client presentation. I didn't sabotage it. I presented an alternative interpretation of our core values. She didn't laugh. You inserted personal content into a high-level pitch without approval that caused a potential client to leave mid-meeting. I didn't blink. I had approval. Brad told me, quote, "You're running slides, I own it." Daphne stared at me. Is that what you're going with? That's the truth. She tapped her pen once against the desk. We've decided on a 2-week unpaid suspension while we investigate. Your account access will be limited, and you're not to contact any clients or employees during this time. I nodded. I expected that. It was part of the plan. What she didn't know was that I already had copies of Brad's Slack messages. Every passive-aggressive note, every joke about mental health, every time he'd said things like maybe Miles should focus on PowerPoint instead of crying over his dog like a girl. I had it all saved, not on my work laptop, but on my personal cloud. I left the building quietly, but I didn't go home. I went to see someone I hadn't talked to in almost a decade. James Keller. James and I went to college together at FSU. He was now a freelance consultant who specialized in corporate behavior audits, the kind of guy you call when you need to know if your boss is a lawsuit waiting to happen. He used to work for one of those big firms until he blew the whistle on a VP who was trading company shares before merger announcements. Got blackballed after that. Now he works alone. James owed me. Back in college, I covered for him when he was about to get expelled for cheating on a senior paper. I rewrote it in 48 hours and turned it in under his name. That paper got him his degree. When I walked into his dusty office above a pawn shop near Largo, he smiled like he'd seen a ghost. "Miles Weston? You still alive?" "Barely," I said, sitting across from his desk. "I need your help. I want to take someone down." He listened. I told him everything, from the way Brad humiliated junior staff in front of clients, to how he shot down women in meetings with "that's cute," to what he said about Blue. I even told him about the presentation. He laughed out loud. "Man, that's one hell of a send-off. You really played a long game." "It's not done yet," I said. "I want him gone, but clean, not messy. I want the company to know exactly what kind of guy they protected." James nodded. "All right, I'll need access to any digital communication. Emails, Slack, call logs, performance reviews. Can you get them?" "I already did," I said, and handed him a thumb drive. He looked impressed. "You always were quiet, but dangerous." "Just quiet," I said, "until someone kicks the wrong dog." We worked together for 2 weeks while I was on suspension. I kept my head down and stayed offline, like they told me. But James built a report. He combed through every message and found things I didn't even catch. Brad once referred to a Latina intern as a little diversity win in a message to another manager. Another time he told Jen, if Miles cries again, he's out. I don't babysit. He even tried to push a female team lead out by cutting her hours after she came back from maternity leave. We compiled everything. The last piece of the puzzle was the client. I didn't expect Melissa Barris to call me, but she did. Late one afternoon, about 9 days into my suspension, my personal phone rang. "Miles, this is Melissa from Thompson." I stood up in the middle of my living room. "Yes. Hi. I'm not supposed to contact employees directly, but I found your number from a contact card in an old group email." "Okay. I wanted you to know that presentation stayed with me. I went home and cried, not because of the dog, but because of how raw and honest it was." I didn't say anything. "I also looked into your company's leadership, Brad specifically. I've heard things. Some of my friends in the industry won't work with him. Too arrogant. Too manipulative." I waited. "I'm rescheduling our pitch review, but it's not with him. If he shows up, we walk." I felt my stomach drop. "You're serious?" "Very." That was all I needed. I forwarded the report James made, over 70 pages long, with screenshots, references, and footnotes, to the board of directors, the internal ethics officer, and HR. No commentary. No message. Just a document and a subject line. "For your review. Ongoing patterns of managerial misconduct." By the next morning, Brad was placed on administrative leave. That was a Friday. By the following Tuesday, he was gone. Officially, mutual separation. Internally, everyone knew. But here's the twist. Brad didn't go quietly. He blamed me. He started telling people I'd manipulated HR, that I faked messages, that I had some weird obsession with making him look bad. He even suggested I had mental health issues and should be watched carefully. I found out he'd called a few junior employees trying to get them to speak out against me in exchange for help landing new jobs. I thought it was over. It wasn't. A week after Brad was fired, I went back to work. HR never apologized. No one from the board said a word. But when I walked into the office that Monday, people stood up from their desks and clapped. Not in a cheesy, movie way, just a quiet, quick moment of real respect. A few slapped my back. Jen hugged me. She didn't say anything, just held on for a few seconds and let go. It felt good, but I knew better than to think it was over. I could smell it. Brad was still out there, angry, humiliated, and looking for a way back. He didn't wait long. 3 weeks later, Jen called me into her office. Her hands were shaking. "Miles, we have a problem," she said, closing the door behind her. She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. My face was on the screen from a blurry photo taken years ago at a work party. The headline above it said, "Disgruntled employee targets company after emotional breakdown over dog's death." The article wasn't from a major news outlet. It was some local blog nobody had ever heard of. But the language was loaded. It painted me as unstable, saying I'd hacked the presentation, manipulated client emotions, and had a history of emotional issues at the workplace. There were quotes, not from my team, but anonymous sources who claimed I'd lashed out at coworkers in the past and once threw a stapler during a meeting. Total lies. But the damage wasn't about truth. It was about planting doubt. "Brad," I said flatly. Jen nodded. "He's trying to poison the well. These kinds of hit pieces can spread. Clients might see it." I clenched my jaw. "We need to respond." HR refused. The board wanted it to blow over. So I responded myself. I wrote a long post on my personal LinkedIn. I didn't name names. I didn't get emotional. I told the truth. I explained how I lost my dog, how my grief was dismissed, how the presentation came from a place of real emotion, and how what followed exposed something toxic at the heart of the workplace. I thanked the people who supported me. I stood by what I did. The post exploded. Within 48 hours, it had 40,000 reactions, thousands of comments. People from all over the country shared stories about bosses who didn't care, workplaces that treated them like machines. A few dog rescue groups reposted it. So did a couple small business magazines. Then I got a message I didn't expect. It was from Melissa Barris. She linked me to an internal email. A screenshot someone from Brad's old team at another company had forwarded her. It was dated 4 years earlier. In it, Brad had told a subordinate to falsify product testing data to keep the client happy. The person pushed back and Brad replied, "You want a job or you want morals?" Melissa didn't say anything else. Just sent it with the words, "Thought you should have this." I did something risky. I forwarded that email to a local business journalist. Her name was Kate Bell, and she ran an independent site called Tampa Truths. She'd written takedowns of shady developers and corrupt city contracts. I figured if anyone would run with it, she would. She called me the same day. "This is solid," she said. "If you go on record, I can dig deeper." "I'll go on record," I said, "but only if you let me say everything." She gave me a green light. We met in a diner near Clearwater Beach, and I gave her everything. The Slack messages, the emails, the HR dodges, the blog hit piece. James even came with me and handed over a list of Brad's past workplaces where similar patterns had happened. A week later, the article dropped. The Fall of Brad Carter. How a marketing executive's ego crashed a company's ethics. It hit hard. Kate didn't hold back. She linked the Thompson fallout, the internal culture, the personal attacks on me, and the older fraud claims into one long, well-sourced piece. It went viral not just locally, but on LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit. That's when the real twist happened. 3 former female employees from Brad's Atlanta job came forward. One of them claimed he pressured her into staying late alone multiple times, and once touched her back during a one-on-one and said, "Don't be shy. We're not in HR right now." Another said he told her she'd never move up if she took maternity leave. They'd been too scared to speak before. But now they had backup. Kate did a follow-up piece. It was worse than the first. Meanwhile, our company's board scrambled. The CEO released a statement about reaffirming our values. HR sent out a mandatory ethics training schedule. Jen got promoted to Brad's position. People were walking on eggshells. But Brad didn't stay quiet. He went full scorched earth. He filed a lawsuit against me personally for defamation. He claimed I destroyed his career with false information and caused him emotional distress. He wanted $250,000 in damages. I won't lie, it shook me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. The idea of going to court, sitting across from that smug face again, having my personal life pulled apart in front of strangers, it made me sick. But James wasn't scared. He put me in touch with a lawyer he knew. A guy named Rick, ex-military, talked like a mechanic but thought like a chess master. Rick reviewed everything and said he's got no case. We'll bury him. Still, it would take months. The court scheduled a hearing in 6 weeks. In the meantime, I had to live my life, go to work, sit in meetings where Brad's name still echoed in documents and project folders, listen to upper management talk about moving on. But I wasn't moving on. I wasn't done. Not until everyone saw who he really was. and what happened when you tried to turn grief into a weapon. The weeks leading up to the court date were brutal. Brad's legal team tried everything. They demanded my mental health records. They wanted access to my emails from 3 years ago. They claimed my LinkedIn post incited harassment and was motivated by personal instability. But they didn't realize something. When you don't have anything to hide, you don't scare easy. Rick, my lawyer, handled every move like a man who'd seen war. I followed his advice. I stayed quiet online. I worked, I documented everything, and I prepared. Then, 2 weeks before the court hearing, everything shifted. I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. It was a woman. Her voice was shaky. "Is this Miles Weston?" "Yes." "This is Haley Carter." She paused. "I'm Brad's wife." I stood up. "Okay, I'm sorry to bother you," she said, and her voice cracked. "But I read the articles and the messages, all of it." She stopped again. I didn't know what kind of man he really was. I didn't want to believe it, but now I need to talk to someone who's not trying to cover for him. I didn't speak. I let her go on. She told me they had a 14-year-old daughter, Morgan. Said Morgan found the Reddit thread that had gone viral and asked her mom, "Is Dad the bad guy?" Said Morgan hadn't spoken to her dad in a week. "He's drinking more," Haley said. "He's furious. He blames you for everything. But I've seen the way he talks to people for years. He used to belittle me when I was pregnant. He calls Morgan soft if she cries. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm telling you, I believe you, and I'm sorry." We didn't talk long. She just needed to say it. I didn't record the call, didn't use it against him. I didn't need to. The court date came. Brad showed up with a smug look, dressed like he was headed to a yacht fundraiser. His lawyer was a shark, young, aggressive, all noise. But we didn't even make it to full testimony. Rick submitted a motion to dismiss the suit with prejudice, citing malicious prosecution, and attached our 70-plus page ethics file along with multiple statements from ex-employees, including one woman who flew in from Georgia just to testify about what Brad said to her when she was 22 and too scared to report him. The judge read through it all quietly, looked over the papers, flipped back, then stared at Brad and said, "This looks more like retaliation than defamation. Case dismissed with prejudice," meaning Brad couldn't refile. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I looked him in the eye as he walked past, red in the face, fist tight. He didn't look back. That was the last time I saw him in person. What happened after that unraveled quickly. First, Brad's LinkedIn disappeared. Then word spread through industry channels that 2 companies had blacklisted him. Someone at his old job confirmed that he'd applied to a marketing role in Charlotte and was rejected after a background check raised concerns. His wife filed for divorce 3 months later. His daughter moved in with her grandmother. People talk. A former coworker told me he was living in a small rental in Ocala now, applying to smaller agencies under a different version of his name, Bradley C. Trying to dodge the Google results. But the thing about digital footprints, they don't go away. Not when you've burned every bridge on the way down. As for me, I didn't stay at the company. I left 3 months after the court case. I gave Jen my 2 weeks and walked out with a smile on my face. It wasn't anger. I was just done. I started my own small firm with James, behavior audits, workplace consulting, and marketing strategy for ethical companies. We don't take everyone. We pick who we work with. We've been booked out since the 2nd month. I also started volunteering for a local rescue center. On weekends, I walk senior dogs who don't get much attention. I tell them stories about Blue. Sometimes I think about what Brad said that day in his office. It was just a pet. Get over it. And I wonder how a man could live so empty inside that he couldn't understand the bond between a person and the one soul that stayed loyal through everything. I didn't need revenge to destroy him. I just told the truth and stood by it. Everything else, he did to himself.